All right, guys, we are live with the Short Term Rental Pros podcast. Super excited to be here this week with my landlord. I've listened to a lot of podcasts in the short term rental space, and I can't say I've ever heard anybody have their landlord on the phone, or one of their landlords for that matter. So today will be a really interesting episode. We're going to give you guys an inside look at a landlord's perspective, or a real estate investor, developer, and perspective, and kind of how, well, what they see as a whole for the real estate climate, what they see, in their market for themselves, and also how, they work with people like myself in a mutually beneficial way to grow both of our businesses. A lot of times I feel like folks see, arbitrage as like a potentially a one-side game, that somehow you're like taking advantage of the landlord. But I'm going to be honest, guys, Devin's making a lot more money than me. So we're going to get into that, and we're going to get into a lot more. I'm super hyped. Devin, thank you so much for joining today.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So Devin, just give us the background, where are you from? How'd you get into real estate as a whole? And just kind of walk us through your progression as a real estate investor from the start to where you are today.
Yeah, so I grew up in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, went to UNC,
Go Heels.
right down the street. Heels. Yeah. So I've known you, Jeremy, for a little while now. I started working in finance after school, had a non-compete that stopped me from doing various activities except for investing in real estate. So I had a little cash saved up after a few years. So in 2018, I purchased my first property. From there, needed a little bit of work. Met one of my business partners who has a construction background, and we started talking to each other. Realized we have similar values and we could trust each other, which is very important. And we started buying some duplexes, fixing them up, renting them out, refinancing them, and just growing it from there. Eventually, we realized we have a service that we could provide to other people. So we started our own property management, brokerage, and unlimited license construction company, and have started helping others do what we've done in terms of, basically taking a side hustle and trying to make that their full-time gig.
Wow. So, guys, I feel like, I didn't mean to demean you, Devin, by calling you a landlord earlier. You are obviously a lot more than that. Devin actually wears all the hats in real estate. A, he's an investor. B, he actually owns, or partially owns, a brokerage. I'm actually a client of that brokerage, matter of fact. He also owns a construction company with, as he just said, an unlimited license, meaning they can build whatever the heck they want to. And he also he owns a property management firm that specializes in long-term rentals. So yeah, walk us through. So that first, in 2018, you bought, that was it a duplex, your first property? Walk us through that first one, and kind of like that aha moment of like, holy crap, I'm on to something here. I need to go balls to the wall and really go after this, and turn it into something that I can, turn into my living.
Yeah, so it was a quad. Interest rates were a little bit lower back then, but not as low as they eventually got. And I just kind of realized, like, just very basic math. This is what the long-term rental rate could be, and at least on those 4 units. And this is what my mortgage would be. And so, how do I, just buy that, optimize it? It needed a little bit of work. Like Jeremy, you're very familiar with the property. It's the one next to Pony Source Brewing.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, I'm very familiar with that.
and,
I'm on
and
three of those four leases there.
yeah, and so it was, you know, that particular transaction was relatively low risk and lower return, obviously, for that lower risk. It's just dipping my toes in, no real major rehab, just a little bit. And I knew there was potential upside because there was door to a fifth unit that really was just like an empty attic, not even with flooring down or anything. And ultimately, years later, really how I optimized on that property is by turning that fifth unit into what our office is, where I am right now.
And
So
making it look, it's beautiful. They did an extremely good job. Modern finishing, open floor concept. So yeah, tell us, how much did that initial? Just walk us through the numbers, guys. And Devin, he's modest, but he's a math major. The numbers. Devin can do mental math, napkin math on super complicated, multi-unit transactions in like 2 seconds. Like, I'm pretty good at math myself. I'm not gonna boast. I'm not that good, but I'd say I'm pretty, almost an 800 SAT math guy or 770 or whatever. But Devin's like a math phenom. So sometimes I don't even like, I'm having trouble underwriting something. I'm just send it to Devin, not for short-term rental purposes, but I also do look at like, at the ARV value of things and things that are more Devin's domain. I'll send it to him, and he's really the guy to go to. So walk us through the numbers on that first property.
Yeah. So the initial cost was 875,000. Put 20% down. From there, it needed 50,000 or so of, you call it rehab, which is relatively light for a quad. Appliances, tweaking some electric, putting some lights in here and there. And from there, I was able to rent each unit for an average of 1650 a month. With my debt payment at the time, it was somewhere around 3400 a month, not including insurance and tax. From there, 2 years later, I refinanced that debt and basically got a construction line from a community bank, put the property out of my personal name into an LLC, and that helped me finance the additional 240,000 to finish up the fifth unit. So today, what is that? Roughly the 875 plus another 300,000 of work in a little bit under 1.2 million. And of course, I've been taking cash out the whole time. The property's worth probably about 1.5. And
Got
I,
it.
and I free cash flow after everything, call it 3,000 a month.
Got it. His free cash flow, that's coming from my checking account right there.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
Devin is making money. Devin is making money on the property. Not only is he making that, long-term rental cash, but what he gets is that appreciation. That initial, what'd you say, cost 875, you put 20% down. Let's just, let's call it 175,000. Then you were able to refinance it. Now it's up to 1.5 million. You use that refi to pay for the construction that then got it to that 1.5 million. So it didn't come out of your pocket. I know you said 50 grand for that initial rehab. So 225-ish thousand investment has now went up to 750,000. Again, Devin, you're the math guy here, but am I
A little
am I
bit
right
less,
with that
but
napkin?
I'm certainly more than doubling my money in a 5 year
Got
span.
it. Okay, so pretty good. And you've even, he's walked in, and since then, that was your first one. You've been
Yeah.
able to kind of take that strategy and that experience, and you've just rinsed and repeat. To this point, how many deals have you done?
So we're in the 20s now. I would say our partnership is in the 20s. And
Got
me
it.
personally, I have this one also.
And a lot of them are duplexes. So if we're just counting
Yeah.
doors, it's more than 20 doors.
Yeah. Like last year, we bought a 16 unit complex that's about to hit the market for rent. So we're
Got it.
kind
So
of,
how many?
you can imagine the curve on that.
Sure. So how many doors are we at? I know a lot of people like to use the term doors. How many doors are we at?
A little bit over 50.
Okay, got it. So 50 doors in 5 years, and Devin was, what were you at that point? Like 3 years out of college, 4 years out of college or something?
But
Got
he's
it. So he started 5 years, so 27. Now 10 years out of college. He has 50 doors. You have since went full time. You quit that W-2 job, correct?
yeah.
And now, your real estate portfolio as well as the brokerage, in addition to the construction company, is your full-time gig.
Yes.
And just walk us through the synergies of like having all these different avenues in your repertoire.
Yeah. So I, it's a major value add for pretty much anybody I talk to. I feel like as a potential customer client, if you would like to talk to me, understanding when you first look at a property, all of these components that go into how to analyze a deal that maybe has a little bit of hair, whatever you want to call it. It needs some sort of construction piece. It's like I was just telling my wife the other day, like never buy a property without going into the crawl space. But if you just talk to somebody on the street, like how many people actually go in the crawl space when they're looking at a house to buy? And I can be that guy who goes in the
Devin
crawl
will
space with them.
climb into the crawl space for you. He's a wrestler. He's a former college wrestler. He will get his hands down and dirty for you.
Yeah, exactly. Because when you go in the crawl space, you can actually like see what's going on with the property. I can go to somebody and say, "Hey, here are some problems I see. This is what it's going to cost you. You either be scared and run to the hills, or like everybody else is going to be scared to run to the hills. This is the opportunity. If you're going to buy 2 properties this year, this should be one of them. And I think I can give that advice on the construction side. I also have the ability and the employees who, if you want to like sell that property after construction's completed, or have us manage the property, we can handle that for you as well. And so you really get the full analysis of, from the beginning of, how do I even start talking to a lender, because of course real estate is extremely capital intensive, to get the money to the end point where it's like, okay, I have a stabilized property. I'm either going to sell it, or I'm going to have somebody manage it, rent it out, and then refinance, or just at least start getting some of my cash back, because some debt actually automatically converts from a construction period into permanent financing. Like, how do you get from A to Z? We can do it all.
There your go-to. He wears all the different hats, from wrestling into the crawl space to driving up in the nice realtor car. Devin himself doesn't drive the nice car, but he does have realtors
Yeah,
on staff who will show up and drive the nice car and wear the nice outfit. No, if
yeah.
you're watching this on YouTube, you guys can look at Devin's beard right now. I don't know, Devin, when was the last time you shaved that thing?
Shaved or trimmed, but shaves has been a year or two.
Gotcha. Yes.
Yeah,
So
this is the trimmed down version.
got it. So you guys are vertically integrated, and I'll just walk us through, what is your plan for the future, and yeah, and then I want kind of, I'll gear into kind of the Airbnb aspect and like kind of our partnership and how that evolves. But yeah, what is your plan for what's future Devin working on?
Yeah, so we've gotten to the point, at least for ourselves, where we are finding infill opportunities that certain areas like Durham, specifically cities like Charlotte or Raleigh, they want some density. They want to maybe change what a neighborhood sort of looks like, and they are putting these rules in that allow for additional density in areas that otherwise were just for single family homes, where it's okay, it's one house on a half an acre. And we are looking at those opportunities: buy the house, tear it down, put 8 houses there. And having our ability, where I have another partner who works strictly on development and permitting, we can basically do it all, where we are basically becoming sort of a medium-sized development company, where we're also doing the construction and then managing or selling the portfolio. So we're moving into those sorts of size projects, looking at townhomes, really focused on cities in North Carolina. Meanwhile, for other people, we are looking at rehabbing apartment complexes, but we also would do ourselves if it's a big enough apartment complex. Like I mentioned, we just bought a 16 unit last year, but a lot of people who are just trying to get their foot in the door, that they're like, okay, I'm renting right now. Can I buy a duplex, fix it up, live in one side, and rent out the other side? We will help somebody do that.
Got it. So you're kind of you've kind of found your niche right now as, and then like some of you guys who probably follow real estate news are familiar that a lot of states, including North Carolina, are doing a huge push to allow like ADUs, for example, in the backyards of properties. San Diego is notorious right now because they just made a rule where you can build essentially unlimited accessory dwelling units on your property, which is kind of crazy. If that were allowed in North Carolina, Devin would make millions of dollars on the spot. The next day, he would be building 25, 50 ADUs wherever he can. But states, I mean, there's a huge affordable housing crisis right now. There's just not enough housing. I mean, that's really the core issue that we're facing. If you look at the real estate market as a whole, and you can talk about, oh, COVID, low interest rates, high interest rates, the whole like locked in effect, and the fact that people aren't selling their house. Really, like, and Devin, I'm curious if you agree with me. The main issue we have fundamentally is we did not build enough houses since 08, 09. There's just, more demand now. There's more people, more immigration, and we haven't built enough housing to accommodate that. So, and really states are just starting to catch on to that. Like they're late to the game, and they need people like Devin with the experience and the know-how to come in and take what was one house on a plot of land before and turn it into 8. That's what fixes the whole supply and demand issue we have. That's what gets rents down. That's what gives people the ability to find affordable housing, is developers building housing and government, being a partner in that instead of an adversary. So I guess, hey, would you agree with that characterization of yourself? I'm
Yeah,
Devin's not
definitely.
one to wear a cape and fly fly
Yeah,
around,
so
but
yeah, you have a basic idea that construction cost to build a house is what it is. So the only thing you can really tweak at that point is what is your land cost? And the easiest way to tweak that land cost down is take a area that previously required half an acre to build a house and allow it to build 4 to 8 houses on that area. You just decreased the cost and now made substantially more projects viable so that a developer will actually want to do the project. Because otherwise, developers are just going to, go to Raleigh, North Carolina, be inside the belt line, and build $4,000 houses that they can sell for $3 million. And you can just do 1 or 2 of those a year, and you're probably pretty happy with your returns. Instead of focusing on middle class housing, which is really what's needed in order to create the supply for the demand, especially in areas like cities in North Carolina, Durham, Charlotte, Raleigh, where there are just so many people moving here. And even before the pandemic, when everything really energized, there was already too few houses on the market for the amount of people moving here. Then you factor in work from home and people just, having a change in what their work life balance looks like to them. And there are even more people moving here because, I mean, maybe I'm biased, but Durham is an awesome city if you're like under 40 years old and want to be somewhere where it's happening.
so Devin's pitch to you guys is move to Durham, buy a duplex that needs work, live in one side, he'll renovate the other one for you. So that
Then we'll build an ADU around back, and you can move to another house and have 3 units that you're renting and do the same thing over and over again.
yeah, and then we're kind of joking, but I know mutual colleagues who are actually doing that currently, and Devin is helping them do it, and they've made paper wealth. They've made hundreds of thousands of paper wealth in 1 to 2 years by doing that strategy. Okay, so we've kind of talked about what you're doing, what you're specialized on. Now let's get into kind of like how we work together and how a landlord like yourself, how they see partnering with investors, business operators such as myself in order to essentially occupy your listing or occupy your apartments and your houses. So, first I want to say that the way Devin and I got reconnected, so we actually did know each other when we were kids. His One of his buddies is my like childhood best friend's brother, and we went to the beach together when I was probably 10 and you were like 16, 15.
Something like
And
that.
I was amazed because Devin was doing, 4x4, 5x5 Rubik's cubes, like literally with his eyes closed. I kid you not. So that we got into Rubik's cubes, the 3x3 ones at that time. And when we couldn't do it, we were like, Devin, Devin, can you can you fix the Rubik's cube? So I knew Devin, but I probably didn't. I don't think we even saw each other, or talked to each other until COVID, or unless you can remember. If in that the case, I feel bad.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure when we got back together. Even though we both went to UNC, I'm at least 5 years older than you, so we never interacted there.
Yeah.
And
So I think what
yeah,
happened was Sean, your friend, my friend's
yeah,
brother, was an architect, and Andy was telling me that Sean was working with you to help, architect some of these projects you were doing. And I was like, whoa, like what's Devin doing? And I don't Andy was like, I'm not sure, but he's doing a lot. Like he's doing a lot of different projects, which just got me intrigued. And this was like early COVID. This was pretty early in my real estate investing journey. And I think I hit you up on like LinkedIn, or I don't know, I just hit you
yeah.
up. I was like, Devin, here you're doing some cool things, man. You want to go grab a beer? Something like that. Maybe I'm glamorizing this a little bit. Uh,
That sounds like me. Someone hitting me up on LinkedIn for a beer.
yeah, so we just met up. Devin just showed me. He literally just showed me the different projects he was working on. We probably went to like 5 of his different construction projects. And he was just like, yeah, I mean, I'm doing this here. This is like what I think the rent's going to be. Do you yourself, or do you have anyone who wants to rent any of these? It was pretty much, I think it was like as simple as that. And then one of the properties, a duplex, again, your duplex strategy, I was like, yeah, I think this one could work. Again, this was even early for me in my like Airbnb journey. So I'm not even, as adept in where I am now, but I just had the feel that that property would be good. And you were like, all right, well, it's yours, but you need to like pretty much rent it as soon as I'm done with it because I need to get this thing refinanced ASAP Rocky. So, and that's like, to me, that was like, oh, that was a light bulb moment of like, oh, people, investors like Devin, like he's always looking at his next project and always trying to like stretch. Not, I don't know if stretch is the right word, but he's always playing the financing game. And the thing that's most important to him is having that signed lease in hand so he can go do his next project. I mean, he's these projects, he 6 months, 12 months construction, he might make, he might increase the value of them $100,000, $200,000. Like that's what makes him wake up in the morning is like the next deal, the next deal. So someone like me can be a partner and help him expedite the ability to do that next deal. Does that, or what else do you like about me, I guess?
Yeah, I mean that particular project, we were wrapping up around February, sometime like that. Wanted somebody in as soon as possible because any landlord hates vacancy. Vacancy is like the devil, and so it just made sense instead of waiting, say, until the cycle around this area actually starts, which is around May. I can get 2 extra months of rent, which in this case is over $3,000. You're talking about $6,000. Plus, I can refinance and get that capital back 2 months early. And all I have to do is talk to Jeremy, see what works for him. Even during the construction phase, towards the end, when we're talking about curb appeal, things that he might need done to make this a viable Airbnb, I can do those on the front end instead of doing whatever I was going to do to make it a true long-term rental, and just do those tweaks when he to exactly what he wants on the front end. And my benefit, there's no vacancy. Jeremy's easy to work with. I just call him up if I have an issue. He can call me up if he has an issue, and that is something that I value. I think other landlords would. I know there are a lot of other landlords who are like, oh, Airbnb, they're gonna tear up my property. And it's like, well, not not really, because Jeremy's a businessman who needs to make money. If somebody tore up his property, then he wouldn't be able to get the next guest in there. That's a problem. And I believe that you should be doing higher quality properties anyway. You're going to get higher quality tenants on the long term side. So, the same thing applies. That those are the sort of tenants that I want in there. Those sorts of guests are also the ones that they're going to take care of it if the property itself is a higher yielding Airbnb. So
Got it.
there are a lot of parallels there.
Yeah, and I'd say one thing that I thought was funny was that, so Devin, not every landlord has a construction business. Devin happens to have that, which also, guys, like, just I want to thank Devin for his service to the housing supply in the U.S. by building, because a lot of people are scared to build right now. Devin is not. He's not afraid. So, but that being said, like, I think you had one client who was like thinking about working with you, and they wanted to see an example, and then you're like, hey, Jeremy, like, trying to get this person as a construction client. They want to see some of our recent work. Can they get in to see your property? And I think not only obviously he did a good job on the construction, but like, we make them look good. We design these well. I don't know what your opinion is on our
Yeah.
design, but we make them look good, and not only do we make them look good, we also want to keep them in good shape. They're always clean. And, we're both business people. Like, I mean, obviously, if we have guests there, we can't let someone in. But if we don't, it's a mutual, it's a beneficial thing for you. I'm trying to help you. You're trying to help me. So we'll let them in. But yeah, I guess, have you shown clients kind of our properties or with our design, and as like kind of an example, not only from the construction side, but from like a cosmetic
Yeah,
side?
definitely. I mean, there are definitely also people who, you talk about potential clients for me. I know you teach courses and you help manage these Airbnbs. Also, there are people that, they don't necessarily want me to manage on the long-term side, but I can get a construction contract out of it. And for particular projects they're looking at, like showing off that project, like that duplex that you're in, it's a win-win for the two of us. You walk in there and basically they're just like, wow, I get it. Like, this is feasible. Like, which, these are not small ticket items, and to just have a situation where somebody just walks in and just gets it, because when you see it and you can touch it, like, it's just a lot easier than looking at a spreadsheet. Having that sort of example is extremely helpful.
And I compare that to, your long-term tenants. I have been in properties that in general, not even your properties, but just properties that were currently long-term rentals, as well as your properties that were currently long-term rentals. And like what I have found is that a majority, at least in my experience, which I think I actually have a pretty decent sample size at this point, a majority of like normal tenants, and again, these are even places that, Durham, North Carolina is a nicer town, nicer city. Rents are higher than definitely US average, but people are hoarders. Like people just have a lot of stuff. It's like every time I walk in, like I tour an apartment that's currently a long term rental where folk are going to move out, they have crap everywhere. And it's, you got to kind of imagine the place of, all right, let's just ignore all this stuff. But a lot of people have trouble seeing past the crap, like seeing past, what someone's doing to a place. So like being able to go into a place or even show pictures of a listing online where there's nothing there. Like it's only furniture, it's only, the fake plants, it looks, it's only the wall arts. It just probably gives people like comfort in their mind versus like walking them through one of your long-term rentals where you really don't even know what's going to happen when you open the door.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, because I mean, especially like the students, like you really don't know what you're about to walk into with students. Sometimes they haven't been there in a couple of weeks. There's trash usually everywhere, and it's not exactly how you would sell any service or product. So yeah,
Got it.
mostly
So
agreed, and I would
yeah.
reiterate exactly what you just said.
Got it. So we have a good partnership there. So I'm trying to just think of, okay, and you're like, let's say, actually, so this is an example of the flip side of like, so people probably reach out to you a good bit or reach out. I know at this point you have a property management firm, so they're probably not talking to you, but maybe they've seen what I'm doing. We're on this podcast right now, so I'm sure
Yeah,
we'll see what happens after. But then they reach out to you and they go, oh, I want to Airbnb this house because I know you've like sent me some where just like the numbers don't work. Like I look at it and I'm just like, I mean, this isn't going to make, I mean, all signs point to this property not making money. And if any case, losing money. I guess when people reach out to you with that pitch, what's like the most important thing? And like, why is it actually beneficial for them? People say, oh, well, the landlord, once they find out how much money you're making, they're going to do it themselves. Like, why is it actually beneficial? A, like, what's your reaction when people reach out? And like, why is it beneficial for them actually to make money?
you're talking about from the landlord perspective. With
Yeah, for me, yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah, I'm not set up to do that. Yeah, they see it as leaving dollars on the table, but you're talking about me setting up a whole new business venture, basically, which is a different risk profile, and everything with investing is risk assessment. It's a completely different risk
Yeah, I
profile
guess what you're
than what
answering
I'm
right now
doing.
is why don't you do it yourself? Yeah, I'll just
Okay,
rephrase the question. Why don't you do it yourself?
okay. So there are problems with any business. That's what you're doing in business. You're solving problems. And I'm not well equipped to solve that particular problem. I'm well equipped to solve a bunch of other problems, but running out of coffee for an Airbnb guest is not something I'm well equipped for. Now, if the toilet gets clogged, I can have a guy there within hours very, very easily. So it's just a different profile. I mean, you talk about risk versus reward, it's just not there for me. It's much easier for me to de-risk what I'm doing really honestly when you talk about like low vacancy and locking it, like I'll lock in debt for a minimum of 5 years. So I get an Airbnb, arbitrage in there with you, like that's locked in. Also, you'd agree for ideally a minimum of 5 years. Like I just know exactly, like it's a set it and forget it, and I can move on to my next project and work on my construction where I'm making money and my brokerage and refinancing another project instead of having to basically set up this next business arm that I'm. It's just not where it's not what I do.
Yeah, buy 15, $20,000 worth of furniture, work with designers to make sure it looks good, work with furniture assemblers to make sure they're put together, get all the, just,
Yeah.
and then for you, it's just like, I mean, to be frank, again, guys, I will say like, I've made good money the last few years. Like I'm definitely, happy, but Devin's made a lot more money than me. I'm not ashamed to say that, again, like, if he does these projects the way he underwrites them, he gets all of his cash back. So like, let's say he puts, let's say it's like a 300K project and he puts 100 grand in. When he does that refi, he's pulling all that cash out. Like that's how he underwrites his deals. He makes sure that every cent goes back into his pocket to then do the next one. I mean, am I mistaken? Isn't that your criteria? Like the way you underwrite is you want to make sure that when you do that refinance after the construction is done and you have a tenant like me in there, that you literally get every cent back?
If not, there better be a really good reason, like, oh, this is actually just some portfolio in Greensboro where you're cash flowing so well because it's Greensboro. But otherwise, like the duplex we were talking about earlier, we paid 210 for that. We put 170 into it, and it appraised for 535,000. We took 75% of the 535 out, got all our cash back.
Got it. And then on to the next one. So you literally in that 5-6 months, talking to me in February, getting it rented a few months later, you are increasing, your net worth by hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, we bought that. That was an August purchase, and you were in there in March.
So in 8 months, 9 months, you on paper made a couple $100,000.
Roughly 150, yeah.
Yep. Okay. So he did that. Meanwhile, I've been renting it for several years, and I will tell you, I have not netted 150. I mean, I would have to look to see what I've actually done, but it's nowhere near that. So it makes more sense for Devin just to focus on finding those and putting his time and energy into that side of things versus, setting up the logistics of an operation for that. Like, because essentially when I put 20 grand of furniture into that apartment or that house. And like my criteria is I want that paid back in 8 months. So I put in 20 grand and I didn't even get my initial cash investment back for probably 6-7 months. Whereas in that same 8-month period, not only did, Devin get his cash back, but he got that equity value. I didn't get any equity value. Like that furniture is not an asset. Some would argue it's a liability. So in that 6-7 months, I made my initial cash investment back. Meanwhile, he not only recouped his cash, but now he has an asset that is A, cash flowing. I'm paying him rent each month. I'm sure I'm paying you more than whatever the mortgage is. And B, that equity, that appreciation, it's gone up in value. You're paying down the mortgage each month. So that principal pay down, you're capturing all of those benefits where I'm merely recouping monthly cash flow. And guys, sometimes January, February, it might not even cash flow. Like that's, the nature of seasonality. It does cash flow. I mean, I wouldn't be doing it if it didn't. But my point being is like, why would a landlord allow this? Well, guys, a lot of landlords are making a lot of money. And, you can be a partner for them. Again, like I couldn't even get a loan, probably when Devin and I started working together. Like I had Airbnb was like an arbitrage, and co-hosting was like my way into the game. That was my way into the game. I couldn't get the financing. But now, a couple of years later, I've had that cash flow. I've had that revenue. I can show it on the books. I can show it to the IRS. I can show it to banks. Now I'm hitting Devin up as an investor, and I'm saying, and for example, I bought a property with Devin's brokerage, probably like 3 months ago.
Yeah.
And I was about to put another offer in on another house this week, but apparently it just went under contract without us knowing that it was a competitive situation. Kind of bummed about that one. And that one would have needed work. That one would have needed a wall slammed in the middle out of it. So would have definitely hit up Devin on the construction side. So my point being, guys, is like relationships. It's relationships are key. Your situation today is not your situation tomorrow. Like you should definitely focus on what you're uniquely gifted at. But ultimately, you want to own the asset long term. I think that's something that me and Devin talked about early on. And, it was really good for me to know what his goals and his objectives and missions were. Devin, a lot of flippers just sell. And Devin has never been, have you ever sold anything?
No.
Devin doesn't sell. And why is that?
I mean, there's just some basics. If you think about who the wealthiest people are in the world, they are people who you find the project that works. It's a winner on the front end, and winners continue to win. So do not sell. It's a leverageable asset. Getting the deal in the first place, just take it, refinance if you have to. Be patient, be disciplined. Like that's way, way better than, a lot of these guys now interest rates are way up. They might be struggling a little if they were flippers. Some of them got stuck last year when the house value dipped 20%. Like they thought they were going to flip and make 15%, but instead they lost 5%. Like they were doing really, really well for 3 years, and then a bad year happened. Whereas with my properties, with that duplex that Jeremy is doing his arbitrage on, I have a debt payment due. I have rent coming in. There's a little bit of spread on top, and I get to eat lunch and dinner tomorrow without having to worry about where the money's coming from.
Exactly. And
Yeah, be a gatherer. It's better to be the gatherer than the hunter.
in terms of just like relationships, as a whole, I think it's really important. Real estate and just like any type of business is a game of relationships. Like honestly, to be frank, like the reason I'm comfortable, I do have other landlords, and you know, honestly, some of them like maybe I just haven't known them as long. Like I probably wouldn't feel comfortable having them on this podcast because, we just whatever. Like our relationship isn't in that place where I feel comfortable. But here, like, I trust like we're being very transparent. We're giving we're giving numbers on like exact deals. But, again, I look at it as like I help Devin out when I see a situation that is beneficial for him. I'm gonna help him out. I'm gonna give him a lead for whatever he's doing, throw it his way. Vice versa. The first time, when he has a new deal or opportunity, he's gonna, or hopefully, I know you have, maybe you have some more deals. He's gonna run it by me and give me the first look at it. And 30, 20 years from now, we're gonna look at where we are and be happy that we helped each other get there. So it's like you got to look at things as a mutually beneficial thing. And that's why real estate and business is so great, because you can essentially, by helping someone else and adding value to them, you can receive, what goes around comes around. So I don't know if you echo that sentiment.
Yeah, yeah. I have monthly meetups both in Charlotte and Durham that our realty firm puts on, where we just go and we talk to other people, and really all levels of experience, people who know nothing, who don't even have their first property, to other people who own apartment complexes. I have other builders there who I'm technically competing with, but I talk to them because we can learn from each other. We're in a similar environment, see what other people are up to, and networking is the way to get there. I also think, I mean, that was something that if I go back to just like business school at UNC, like they teach you networking like day one, like how important it is. You really don't realize it at the time in college until you get out. But also, a component of that is, you never know who anybody is going to be 5, 10, 15 years from now. And you just don't burn the bridges. I think about the help and advice that I don't know, specific advice that maybe you got from like entrepreneurship professors in college, but those guys, I mean, they're madly successful, and they're just sort of around to give back, and like you said, if you believe in karma, what goes around comes around. Like that's the way the people who taught me how to do business, that's how they're functioning. So that's why I do business that way. Just always just be open minded to listening to people, to helping people if they're sincere, and don't burn any bridges.
Absolutely. Bridges are not meant to be burned. But also, and I'll give kudos to myself in this situation. Just, I was a younger guy. I was probably, when I reconnected with you, I may have been 23, like just out of college, beginning of COVID. And I saw someone who, to be frank, like I didn't know, but it was, you say we were friends was kind of a stretch. Like I hadn't talked to Devin, obviously didn't hate each other, but we hadn't talked or seen each other in more than a decade. But I just hit him up to grab a beer. I didn't even know exactly what would come from it. It wasn't, I didn't pitch him on Airbnb arbitrage. I didn't pitch him on co-hosting. I literally just hit him up and said, "Hey, are you around, or do you have time for a call? Do you have time to link up?" And he just showed me around. It wasn't transactional. It wasn't like, it was just, all right, yeah, I'd love to just like show you around, show you what I'm doing. And from there, opportunistically figured out a way to get involved in what he was doing. And so, yeah, so it's just, I mean, my recommendation for people listening to this who are looking to get into, it doesn't even have to be at this point, it doesn't even have to be Airbnb arbitrage, doesn't have to be co-hosting, doesn't even have to be real estate as a whole. Just like whatever industry you want to do, just hit someone up. And you don't even have to like have vaguely know them. You don't have to have went on a beach trip when you were 10 years old with them. Literally anybody you see out there on LinkedIn, on Instagram, that's just like doing something interesting and in a field where you want to be, send them a DM. I mean, I would recommend trying to add value. And I guess I did add value to you. I paid you monthly rent. That was what you needed at the time. But if I didn't have that, I may have been, hey, Devin, you need a project manager for your flips. Like if that was something that you did mention to me, that was something you were looking for at around that time. At that point, I was, doing a bow rental business. I was also starting to take investor capital to go out and buy Airbnbs and, doing more arbitrages. So like that wasn't my vertical. I was doing something else. But like if I hadn't been, when you told me that, I may have gone, sure. Oh, or not even sure, but like, here's my resume, Devin. Let's do it. So I guess what would you say to like someone who's looking to get into real estate and they're not sure how to start? There's all these different, there's Airbnb, Section 8, home flipping. I guess what would you recommend to someone looking to start in 2023?
Do they already own their own place, or are they renting?
They don't own. So let's say two cases. One, they have
Yeah.
they have great conventional financing options. Two, they've got credit card debt. They're looking to just figure it out over the long run.
Yeah. So we'll go the easy route. The easy route one depends on their risk tolerance. If they are low risk, I would just go buy an already fixed up quad, live in one unit, rent out the other three. The
House
happy, yes, house hack basically. The one that I really prefer is somebody who's 24 years old looking for their first house, and they may get something that's called like 2 or 3K loan, where they can actually rehab the house that they're going to live in. You buy that, then you have 6 months to rehab the house before you have to move in it. You have to live in there a minimum of 1 year, but you could add a tremendous amount of value in getting that house, which also in this interest rate environment just might be the better way to go when you're talking about risk reward. And then I guess the last route is they've got bad luck, bad credit, bad everything. How do you get in? I think you need to just figure out a way to maybe get your real estate license, something like that, get construction experience, get an actual skill of some sort in real estate to just get your foot in the door.
Project manage for you.
Yeah.
Are you looking for project managers?
Not currently, but I'm growing, so I will soon. I'm always looking for real estate brokers who are young, aggressive, and looking to just get deals done and get themselves a commission. There are other firms out there where you can be a real estate broker, and instead of like taking actual cash compensation on a transaction, you can get equity in the deal. There are a few firms out there like that. That's one way that sort of person can actually get actual real estate with no capital. You just go and you find somebody with capital, and you do the deal for them, and you broker it, and you get a little piece of that deal. There are possibilities like that out there, but outside of that, really just get a skill. Like, yeah, if you want to make more money, learn more skills. That's general in life. Like, learn skills, you will make more money.
Yeah, you might not be able to do, and I can't even do the mental math like Devin, but there is some skill out there that's for you, whatever it may be. And this isn't even, again, this is a short-term rental podcast, but there's many high value skills out there. And if you want to get into real estate, maybe your route of getting there is getting the highest value skill possible, making as much, getting access to financing, and then hitting Devin up so he can take a single family lot and have you build a quadruplex with you that will provide generational wealth for your family. So Devin, so obviously you're doing a lot of deals. You have all these different companies now. I guess what is your long-term goal? Like what Devin 30 years from now, where are you?
30 years, I'm probably chilling on a beach or the mountains or something.
All right, 15 years, 10 years.
Yeah, it's about that financial independence where I don't have to worry or stress really. I'm not a very materialistic person. I value my time. I obviously enjoy real estate, so I tell people I'm going to retire in a few years, and they're like, "Well, what does retirement look like to you?" I said, "Well, I'm still going to do deals." Like, they're like, "Well, that doesn't sound very retired." It's like, "Well, it's different. I can be choosier about who I work with and really only do a few deals." So I'll probably cut back on that. But ideally, I built a machine where there are a few key people running my business that they take my role right now, where they're going in the crawl space and they're getting to
Retirement
learn
for
from
you
me.
means not going into the crawl spaces,
Pretty
essentially.
much. I'll have an
Essentially what
employee
you're
do
doing
that.
right now, but not going into the crawl space.
Yes, yeah,
So
pretty much.
someone who's looking to add value, you literally all you got to do is go into the crawl space for Devins and make it so he doesn't have to do
Yeah,
that.
yeah. You have to learn what you're looking at in the crawl space. That's a pretty key skill there.
Devin,
To
I will admit
understand.
I'm 6'3". I am not going into the crawl spaces. I do when I buy a place and it's painful. I don't know if I could do it for other people, man. I'm just saying you might have to count me out of the search for the crawl space. I'm sorry we can't do business in that regard.
Yeah, but that's where I'm looking to get to. I like, honestly, like wrestling coaching. I just started doing that again. Like, if I have more time for that, I'll do some of that. It comes down to that work-life balance, looking at like starting a family relatively soon, I guess. We'll see. And, where do you want to be at a certain age? For me, this is like sort of the path on the timeline that I could choose more, with more control over what I'm getting to prioritize. And that's what real estate's, at least, I'm not quite there yet to where I want to be, but I'm well on my way to, getting to really prioritize my Devin time and not my work time.
God, so you'll be on the hunt for less deals for me. Dang. All right. Now I'm not. Let's not allow Devin to retire. So stops looking for deals for me. Okay, so I kind of asked this earlier, but I think I did a poor job of articulating it. But you do. I mean, you've mentioned to me before that when you put a listing online for rent. I mean, obviously arbitrage is hot nowadays. It's hot, especially with younger folk. Like honestly, I am now. I was a couple years ago. They hit you up, and I guess what are like some of the like people who give a good pitch? What's their good pitch? And then those who don't give a good pitch, like why isn't their pitch good?
Yeah, I think it comes down to experience. I think about it the same way that like hard money lenders look at different people. It's like you go to the hard money lender, you try to get a loan. The hard money lender is like, okay, show me your experience. Like, just does your work speak for itself? Like, for me, anytime I need a loan, I'm from a hard money guy. I'm just like, look, here's a refi I did a couple years ago with 9 properties on it. Like, give me the loan, I'm good for it. And then that's how the hard money guys like to look at it too. Just show that you know what you're doing. So I know like for someone who's just trying to get in, I don't know if like co-hosting is how they get in with you so that you can share your experience to actually convince the landlord that they have that experience. But otherwise, it's very tough for me to know that somebody knows the numbers that actually go into getting the project complete, getting to the point where they are cash flow positive. That's the same concern that the hard money lender has. You have a property that needs to be fixed up. Do they have the construction experience to fix up the property to either sell the house or get a tenant in there and refinance? That the sort of way to prove it on the pitch is to be like, here's where I've done it already. For hard money lenders, usually if you've done it twice, that's enough to prove it. I don't know exactly if there's a number like that for the Airbnb, but certainly at least once, if you haven't done it at all, being able to partner with somebody who has, or taking the plunge on your own, like buy your own duplex and do it with the other side, the other unit, that can really show a potential landlord like, hey, this is how I know I can do it because I'm doing it. Otherwise, I know there are properties out there where people have come and pitched me on it, and I was like, I already know. I spoke to Jeremy that like I'm asking 2,100 in rent, and he's like the most I can pay to make any money here is $1,400. So whoever is trying to do that deal is probably going to lose $700 a month if they go with you. So it's like, if you come at me on that, I'm going to tune you out on every future deal too, because I knew you didn't know your numbers on the first one. So know your numbers, I guess, and prove
So
you
they
can
have
do
they
it.
have no experience. A, they have no experience, and B, they're just they're just like they're assuming that they can just kind of make money, which is I think I try to like know your numbers. I always say know your numbers, know the variables. Like you need to know the variables. Like at the bare least, know that how much the internet is. Like, do you know how much the internet costs in Durham, North Carolina? Because guys, I have rural properties where I'm spending $150 a month on Starlink, whereas in Durham, there's several internet providers, but folk just kind of like reach out and they don't actually understand the variables. and they might put themselves in a situation where they're literally losing money. And Devin comes from that. Again, he's relating it to a hard money lender where they're not going to give you money unless they know you're going to make money. Like, they want you to make money because that's where they feel secure. So for you, like, you want to feel secure that that tenant, again, like you said earlier, 5 years, like you have confidence that when we're going into a property, or I'm going into your property, I'm staying 5 years. I'm not staying 1 year and then calling it quits, because that then it wouldn't be good for me. So you want someone who, and if they're losing money in year one, that kind of defeats the purpose, and they might, be more likely to leave, or to just, stop paying rent, or have some situation arise there. So I guess, yeah, is that what when someone reaches out, you know, starry eyed and, all excited, and they don't have a track record, as well as, do you ask them like, how much do you think this property will make? I mean, I know you ask me, like, and I'll show you, I'll be like, here's the data that I'm looking at. This is how much I think it's going to make. Like,
Yeah.
I show you the numbers. Do they?
The truth is, I already know if it works for an Airbnb or not by the time they've reached out, because I probably already talked to you, honestly. So I
Yeah.
already know, like, hey, like, it doesn't work. Otherwise, I would be doing it already. Like, they, like, so it's difficult for me personally,
Sure.
on those particular cases, unless they get me before I even like have a project that's like viable. Like, I have new build construction, although honestly, like, new build in Durham, just it wouldn't work for arbitrage because of the sort of rent I can get on the long term side. I'm going to ask for it. Like, it just doesn't make
Because
sense
you're
for
also
me.
building for long term, is at this point. Like, you're building,
Yeah,
that I think we've talked about, your kind of like buy box is that like 3-4 bedroom townhouse, that, kind of like some shared driveway situation. Whereas, like, in my experience, the properties I do with you that work for the most part is like they have a private backyard that their dog can kind of like run around in. And that's the reason why, things do well and that's why the one we worked together, we built a fence in the backyard, because that
yeah,
was the amenity that I saw, that, hey, if we have this amenity, people would rather stay here than stay in a hotel downtown, you know?
yeah.
So,
And Durham market specifically, it's knowing the market. This is a good point on knowing your market. Like Durham, I, Jeremy's not the only Airbnb arbitrage guy I've talked to in the past. Like, everybody knows, like, the two bedrooms, the one bedrooms in Durham, for whatever reason, they're more profitable than the three beds. Like, everybody will tell you, and I guess this is something you can pull from AirDNA. The three beds do not pull substantially more revenue than a two bed on a short term rental in Durham, North Carolina. So when you talk about what a landlord's going to charge, he's going to say, well, I want more money for a three bed than a two bed. That's just, that makes sense. And it does, the increase from the landlord perspective on the long term is substantially more than the increase on the short term rental side revenue, going from the two bed to the three bed. So that's another point when, like, somebody reaches out to me and they're like, oh, I see this 3 bedroom house you have over here. I'd love to do Airbnb there. I'm like, I know it doesn't work. Like, it just doesn't. The only thing that works in Durham, goes 1 and 2 beds, and then sometimes these like larger 4 or 5 bedroom situations.
which are
Um,
totally different. Talking about like knowing your market, knowing your clientele. The 1 to 2 bed and the 4 to 5 bed are completely different clientele. The 1 to 2 bed, you can get the folk, like, for example, at one of your quadplex right now, we have folk who are there because I think they are doing Wicked. Durham is
yeah,
hosting like Wicked for a month. I guess Deepak has Wicked for the month. So we have like, you know, like two separate Wicked actors renting, renting different apartments because they want an apartment for a month, while they're traveling. So you get that like monthly travel for like 1-2 people. But yeah, 3 bedrooms, it's like you don't really get that. And you also don't really get like that big family who's, coming for graduation or coming for, to move their kids into college. Like you don't get that like family reunion. So you got to know like who is coming to a specific market, and like you got to understand that, that 4 or 5 bedroom might be completely different than that 1-2 bedroom. And this, for you is maybe not as pertinent, obviously, but for me, like I want to know the clientele that I have, like going into something. Like I'm like, who am I dealing with here? What types of stays? Like I don't want that to be a mystery for myself. I don't want to be surprised buy it. So I think it's really interesting that that's the same for you too. Like you want to know that the type of property that you're renting is actually going to get like the type of clients, a volume. Obviously, you want it rented, you want your tenant making money so that they, you're confident they're going to pay their rent. But B, you probably want to know, like, I mean, for instance, you work right above the 3 apartments I'm renting from you. Do you have issues with our tenants? I guess tell me. Let's hear you clear the air.
I mean, from time to time, but I have issues with my long-term tenants from time to time. So it's no real different. But it goes back to like on the long-term side, the same questions are asked. Like, how do you like who is going to live in this house? Would I live in this house? Those sorts of questions that you ask yourself when you're looking at a deal. I mean, one key thing is like for me when I'm looking at something is like, are more people tomorrow going to want to live here than yesterday? And that's for when you're buying a property. I don't know necessarily if it's applicable for arbitrage, but if you are arbitraging and owning your own property, you might want to ask that question: are more people going to want to stay here tomorrow than were staying here yesterday? So
And
that
would
you
you
have
say that's
increasing.
like population growth is kind of
Yeah,
the variable that dictates that?
yeah, and I mean that's like and again maybe I'm biased, but like you talk about these metrics like Charlotte, Raleigh, Durham, they're over a 10-year period, they're up 20+% in population, and
Hey, I
we're,
mean,
we're
I've only bought in Florida, North Carolina, places where, and different cities in
yeah,
North Carolina too, places where population growth is occurring. And I echo your reasoning for that. And for arbitrage too, I'm less concerned about the population growth. I would say it's really like supply and demand. I look at a market and say, is there more people coming from a short term basis, like year over
yeah,
year? If there's less people coming, then I'm like, yikes. And then is that supply, going up so much where cause for concern? And unfortunately, it is in a lot of places. Supply for Airbnb, especially in the last like year or two, has gone bonanza in a lot of places. And that being said, that's why, I want to make sure I'm making money on everything and I'm not entering into things where I don't make money because then can't really do it anymore. And that's
yeah,
why it's good to work with people like myself to like help you understand how to analyze things and to use, softwares like BNBCalc so you can analyze things and run the numbers. I digress. Let's get back to
yeah,
Devin. So Devin, what would
yeah,
you recommend? And you
yeah.
touched earlier on your recommendation, getting a high value skill. Usually I ask people, what is like a tangible tip for those looking to get into the short term rental game? I know you're quasi in the short term rental game, but what's your tangible tip for, anyone looking to be successful in real estate, looking to have that financial freedom you talked about, looking to live their life on their own schedule?
Yeah, so you're going to need to get a loan. You should learn some basic personal finance. It's something that in America it's not taught in school, but personal finance and how to get a loan is absurdly important for this. It's absurdly important for life in general, how to not rack up credit card debt, understand what your cost of financing is when you're doing certain activities, and why, the last few years before rates really popped, why it was such an optimal time when like my house, my personal primary, I have a 30-year loan at 2.75%. Like,
Jealous.
yeah, exactly. And that's because, like, I mean, I bought that house 7 years ago. I refinanced twice since I bought the house, added solar panels, like, financed the solar panels and had the solar panels paying for themselves because I understood the finance component of it.
Wow. So
So,
you literally underwrote solar panels to see how much your electrical savings would be and how much that was relative to the debt service on the electrical monthly payments, or as the debt payments, the monthly loan debt payments.
yeah, so it came with a deal on the financing of the solar panels that was something like 4% over 20 years. But I knew after I added the solar panels, I could refinance my primary, including the solar
Oh,
panels, and bundle that all into the same loan.
got it. Okay. Wow. So Devin he's doing numbers on numbers on numbers here.
Yeah.
So
Plus there's a 30%, or at least at the time it was 30% tax
rebate,
incentive. Yeah.
tax. Oh my gosh. All right. Devin's we're playing 2D chess. He's playing 5D here.
uh,
Okay,
yeah.
so know your numbers,
Yeah.
whatever you're doing. So if it's Airbnb, if it's personal finance, if it's your monthly, how much you make in a month, and relative to like what your credit card debt is, like why is credit card debt at 20%? Terrible. I've been reading. I don't know if you've been reading on it on just like how much credit card debt we have and how much
Yeah.
credit card debt is increasing right now. It's like honestly pretty frightening. And I think a lot of people don't really understand. how giving American Express and Chase 20% is kind of like I would
Getting
say
them out.
robbery. It's like robbery. Like that to me, that's robbery.
Yeah.
Whereas, you take a loan out to build a property with Devin, you're getting 7% debt, but that 7% debt, it's amortized. You're getting equity each month. You're creating a valuable asset. And if you're doing the duplex strategy and the house hacking you talked about earlier, you're also living there. So I think these are all really good points. So Devin, for those who are trying to reach out to you from construction, I hope people don't take this to reach out to Devin from an arbitrage standpoint. But I mean, actually, whatever, do it. I mean,
Yeah.
he's already going
They'll,
to show
they'll
you
probably end up
property.
getting referred to you.
Yeah, but from like whatever, from if folks want to
Yeah.
reach out to you, how can they find you?
LinkedIn's probably the best way. I'm, I'm the I'm the only Devin Solow on the planet, as far as I know. So you should be able to just search my name and find me on LinkedIn. Go to our website, call the office. You can get my phone number that way. Shoot me an email. Um, yeah, I'm relatively responsive and accessible. Honestly, if you
He's
want to talk
very
about real estate,
responsive.
that is. If you
Devin's
want to talk about
Devin's
real estate, that is.
Yeah,
Um,
Devin and I used to just talk. Again, this was even pre the fact that we were doing deals together. We would talk 40 minutes about the state. And I guess I only have a couple minutes here, but yeah, what is your opinion on the state of the economy, on the state of the housing market? I know you talked about you have some 5-year debt. I have a very little amount of 5-year debt. I'm going to be honest, the ones we have in 5-year adjustable, I'm getting rid of them. I'm just selling them. They've already gone up a lot in value. We only have 2 of those, and I'm actually only selling 1. I digress. Yeah, what is your opinion on like the state of interest rates, the state of the real estate market? I know you are still active, but just what's your thoughts as a whole?
yeah, there's still deals out there. You just gotta find them. One good thing is just like there are people out there who are like, oh, we buying in upstate New York, and there are deals in upstate New York. Look at how the deal works. It cash flows, and it's like, man, upstate New York, you're out of your mind. Like that breaks rule number one of real estate. You just follow the rules, like location, location, location. Just buy it in the right location, and you'll probably be okay. That like trumps everything, even if you make a ton of other mistakes. I mean, the second rule, don't overpay. That's obvious. Don't overpay. And then I say don't be an idiot, but really it's like don't think that you're smarter than everybody else. You probably are. You're certainly not smarter than everybody else in aggregate as a market moves. So when you are thinking about where to find these deals, and like everybody else is running from the hills from a house, but it's such a great price. Like there's a reason for that. You don't see something that
Go
other
into the crawl space.
people. Yeah, somebody else probably went into the crawl space unless like literally like if it's an auction, if it's on the market, like somebody's gone in that crawl space. Like
Devin has been there. He's already looked in that crawl space.
exactly.
All right, guys. This episode is brought to you by Crawl Space, a place you should always go prior to making any transactions or offers on properties. Well, Devin, thank you so much for coming today. Look forward to continuing to grow with you, seeing your portfolio grow, see you accomplish the ambitious goals of sitting on the beach and having someone go into crawl space for you. So, yeah, guys, maybe have Devin back when he's sipping some Mai Tais on the beach or in the mountains. And stay tuned until the next time, guys. This is Short Term Rental Pros. Devin, thank you again for coming.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.